The man standing at the end of the dusty street looked like he had been carved from the same red rock that surrounded Eldorado Canyon, Nevada, weathered by sun and hardship until there was nothing soft left in him, except maybe his eyes when he looked at the worn woman loading supplies onto her wagon outside the general store. Russell Wade had ridden into town 3 days ago with nothing but a horse, a gun, and the kind of quiet determination that made people think twice before asking questions. He was 28 years old but looked older, the way men did in 1883 when life carved lines into faces like water wearing down stone. He had been working at the Silver Creek Ranch just outside town, breaking horses and mending fences, earning honest money for the first time in months after a long winter spent drifting from one dead-end job to another across the Nevada territory. The woman he watched now was maybe 30, maybe older. It was hard to tell with women who had lived the kind of life that showed on their faces. Her name was Emma Brennan, and Russell had heard the talk about her in the saloon the night before. Widow woman. Husband died 2 years back in a mining accident, trying to run a small ranch by herself with nothing but grit and stubbornness. Most folks respected her for it, but respect did not pay bills or fix broken fences or keep cattle from wandering off into the hills. Russell had noticed her the first day he arrived, noticed the way she held herself straight even when the weight of the supplies she carried would have bent most people double. He noticed the lines around her eyes, the way her hands were rough and calloused, the streak of gray in her dark brown hair that she did not bother to hide. She was not pretty in the way saloon girls were pretty, all painted and perfumed and soft. She was something else entirely, something that made his chest tighten when he looked at her. He crossed the street now, his boots kicking up little clouds of dust with each step. The afternoon sun beat down mercilessly, and he could feel sweat trickling down his back under his shirt. Emma was struggling with a 50-pound sack of feed, trying to hoist it up onto the wagon bed. "Madam," he said, touching the brim of his hat, "let me help you with that." She turned to look at him, and he saw wariness in her green eyes. Women alone learn to be wary. "I can manage," she said, her voice tired but firm. "I am sure you can," Russell said. "But there is no reason to when I am standing right here with 2 good arms and nothing better to do for the next 5 minutes. Something flickered across her face, maybe the ghost of a smile. 5 minutes. "You have got somewhere important to be." "Nowhere at all," he admitted. "But I figured you might not want help from a stranger for longer than that." This time she did smile just a little. "All right then. 5 minutes. Russell lifted the feed sack easily and settled it into the wagon bed alongside the other supplies. He saw flour, beans, coffee, a small bag of sugar, some nails, and a coil of rope. The practical purchases of someone who knew exactly what she needed and could not afford to waste money on anything else. "You have more inside?" he asked. "2 more sacks and a crate," Emma said. She was studying him now, taking his measure the way people did in small towns where everyone knew everyone else's business. "You are the new hand at Silver Creek." "Yes, madam. Russell Wade. Emma Brennan." She did not offer her hand, and he did not expect her to. "You planning on staying around Eldorado Canyon long?" "Depends on whether there is work," Russell said honestly. "I go where the jobs are." "Must be a lonely way to live." "I suppose it is." He headed into the store before she could say anything else, before the conversation could turn into something more than it was. But when he carried out the last of her supplies and secured them in the wagon, she was still watching him with those sharp green eyes that seemed to see right through whatever walls he tried to put up. "Thank you," Emma said. "For the help. You are welcome." Russell stepped back, ready to tip his hat and walk away, but something made him pause. If you ever need a hand out at your place, I am good with repairs. Fair rates. I cannot afford to hire help, Emma said bluntly, barely keeping my head above water as it is. I was not talking about money, Russell said. Maybe just a meal when the work is done. I'm getting tired of my own cooking. She studied him for a long moment, and he could see her weighing the offer, looking for the catch. Why would you do that? It was a fair question. Russell thought about how to answer it, thought about all the things he could say that would sound good but would not be quite true. In the end, he settled on something simple. Because you look like you could use the help, and I have got time. Emma climbed up onto the wagon seat, gathering the reins in her work-roughened hands. For a moment, he thought she was going to drive away without another word, but then she looked down at him. I have fences that need mending on the south pasture. If you want to come out Saturday morning, I will have breakfast waiting, but I am warning you now, I am not a very good cook. I am not particular, Russell said, and he felt something warm unfold in his chest when she gave him a real smile this time, small but genuine. Brennan Ranch. 5 miles west on the canyon road. You cannot miss it. He watched her drive away, the wagon rattling over the rutted street, and he knew without quite understanding why that something had just shifted in his life. He had helped plenty of people before, had taken odd jobs and moved on without looking back. But there was something about Emma Brennan, something in the set of her shoulders and the lines on her weathered face and the way she did not apologize for being exactly who she was, that made him want to stay. Saturday morning came up clear and bright, the way mornings did in Nevada before the heat settled in like a wool blanket. Russell borrowed a horse from the ranch foreman, promising to have it back by evening, and rode out toward the Brennan place as the sun was just starting to climb over the eastern hills. The ranch was small, maybe 160 acres of scrub and rocky pasture with a house that had seen better days and a barn that leaned slightly to the left. But the fences were mostly sound, and the few cattle he could see looked healthy enough. He could tell Emma worked hard to keep the place going, could see evidence of recent repairs done with whatever materials were at hand. A woman alone doing the work of 2 or 3 people, holding on by sheer will. She was waiting on the porch when he rode up, wearing a faded blue dress with an apron tied over it, her hair pulled back in a practical bun. "You came," she said, and he heard surprise in her voice, said I would. Russell dismounted and tied his horse to the rail. A man should keep his word. Not all of them do. Emma turned toward the door. Come on inside. Breakfast is ready. The house was small but clean, spare in the way homes were when people could not afford anything that was not necessary. A table with 2 chairs, a stove, a few shelves with dishes and supplies, a door that probably led to a single bedroom. But there were little touches that spoke of someone who had not given up on making a place feel like home. Wildflowers in a jar on the table, curtains at the window, a quilt folded neatly over the back of a chair. Emma served him eggs and bacon and biscuits that were a little tough, but tasted fine with butter and jam. They ate in comfortable silence for a while, and Russell was surprised at how easy it felt, sitting across the table from this woman he barely knew. "Your husband," he said finally. "What was his name?" "Thomas." Emma looked down at her plate. "He was a good man, not always the easiest to live with, but good. He worked the mines trying to make enough money to build this place into something. He wanted to have cattle, real herds, not just the few head we have now. He wanted to matter." "Seems to me he did matter," Russell said quietly. "He mattered to you." "Yes," she met his eyes. "But mattering to one person was never enough for Thomas. He wanted more, always more. That is what killed him in the end, going deeper into the mines than was safe, chasing a vein of silver that might not even exist." Russell heard the complicated grief in her voice, the love mixed with frustration and anger at being left alone. How long were you married? 8 years. We were both 20 when we wed, full of dreams about what our life would be. Emma stood and started clearing the plates. Dreams do not keep you warm at night or fix broken fences. No, Russell agreed. They do not. After breakfast, he went out to survey the south pasture fence. Emma had not been exaggerating about the need for repairs. Whole sections were down, posts rotted through or knocked over by cattle or winter weather. It was going to take more than one morning to fix it all. Emma came out a while later carrying a canteen of water. She had changed into work clothes, men's trousers, and a shirt that had probably belonged to her husband. "It is worse than I thought," she said, looking at the damage. "It will take a few days," Russell admitted, "but it is doable. You have the materials." "Some, probably not enough," she sighed. "I was hoping to make do with what I have. I can bring out some supplies from town. You can pay me back when you sell cattle in the fall." Emma shook her head. "I cannot ask you to do that. You are not asking. I am offering." Russell pulled off his hat and wiped sweat from his forehead. "Look, I know what it is like to have pride, but pride does not keep cattle from wandering off, and you need these fences fixed." She was quiet for a long time, staring out at the pasture. Then she said, "Why are you doing this, really? You do not know me. You do not owe me anything." Russell thought about how to answer that. He could tell her it was just because he was a decent man who helped people when he could. He could say it was because he needed the work or the meals or a reason to stay in town a little longer. All of those things would have been partly true. But standing there in the hot sun with Emma Brennan looking at him like she was trying to puzzle out his secrets, he found himself saying something closer to the whole truth. "Because when I look at you, I see someone who has not given up even when most people would have. I see someone strong and real and not pretending to be anything other than what they are. And I guess I want to be around that for a while. I want to be the kind of man who helps someone like you." Emma's eyes widened slightly, and he saw color rise in her weathered cheeks. "That is quite a speech, Mr. Wade. Russell, and I mean every word of it." "All right then, Russell." She handed him the canteen. "I will be inside working on the garden if you need anything." He worked through the morning and into the afternoon, pulling out rotted posts and digging new holes, stretching wire and hammering nails. It was hard physical work, the kind that made his muscles burn and sweat pour down his face, but it felt good to be building something, fixing something, making something better than it was. He could not remember the last time he had felt this sense of purpose. Emma brought him lunch around noon, sandwiches and water and a piece of dried apple pie. They sat in the shade of a cottonwood tree, and she asked him about his life. He told her about growing up on a ranch in Texas, about leaving home at 18 when his father died and the bank took the land. He told her about drifting from job to job, working as a cowhand and a ranch hand and sometimes a hired gun when times were desperate and he needed money. "A hired gun," Emma said, and he heard judgment in her voice. "I am not proud of it," Russell said, "but a man has got to eat. I never killed anyone who did not have it coming, if that makes any difference." "Does it make a difference to you?" He thought about that. "Yes. It has to, or else what is the point of trying to be better?" Emma nodded slowly. "I can understand that. We all do things we are not proud of when we are trying to survive." "What about you?" Russell asked. "You grow up around here, California originally." "My family came west when I was a girl, looking for gold like everyone else. We did not find it, of course. Most people did not. My father worked as a carpenter in Sacramento, and that is where I met Thomas. He was so full of life, so certain that fortune was waiting just around the corner." She smiled sadly. "I believed him, or maybe I just wanted to believe him. He brought you here. He heard about silver strikes in Nevada, and was convinced this was where we would make our fortune. We bought this land with every penny we had, and Thomas went to work in the mines while I tried to build something here. For 8 years we struggled, always thinking next month would be better, next year we would finally get ahead. She looked around at the ranch. And then he died, and I realized I was tired of chasing fortunes. I just wanted something stable, something I could count on. That is not asking too much, Russell said. Maybe not, but it seems like it sometimes. They sat in silence for a while, and Russell found himself studying her profile, the way the sun brought out reddish highlights in her hair, the strength in the line of her jaw. She was not beautiful in any conventional way, but there was something compelling about her, something that drew him in deeper every time they talked. "I should get back to work," he said finally, standing and brushing dirt from his pants. "Russell," Emma said, and he turned to look at her. "Thank you. For the work, yes, but also for listening. It has been a long time since I talked to someone who actually seemed interested in what I had to say." "That is a shame," Russell said honestly. "You are interesting to listen to." He saw her smile as he walked back to the fence line, and he felt that warm feeling in his chest again, stronger this time. The days fell into a pattern after that. Russell would work at Silver Creek during the week, breaking horses and doing whatever jobs the foreman assigned him. On Saturdays, he would ride out to the Brennan place and spend the day working on repairs. The fences were finished after 3 weeks, so he moved on to other projects, fixing the barn door that hung crooked, patching the roof where rain had gotten through, reinforcing the well cover. Emma would bring him meals and water, and they would talk. He learned that she loved to read but could rarely afford books, so she reread the same few volumes over and over. He learned that she had wanted children, but had never been able to carry a pregnancy to term, and the grief of that still haunted her. He learned that she sang while she worked in the garden, old folk songs her mother had taught her, and that her favorite time of day was early morning before the heat settled in. She learned that he had a younger sister somewhere in Texas, who he had not seen in 10 years and felt guilty about abandoning. She learned that he was good with his hands, could fix almost anything, but had never had a place to call his own. She learned that he was lonely, had been lonely for so long that he had almost forgotten what it felt like to have someone to talk to. They did not talk about what was growing between them. Russell told himself he was just helping a neighbor, just being decent. Emma told herself she was just grateful for the help, just being practical. But the truth was there in the way their eyes met and held, in the way they found excuses to stand close to each other, in the way the air seemed to crackle with possibility whenever they were together. It was a Sunday afternoon in late August when things finally shifted. Russell had finished everything on Emma's list of repairs, and he knew he should probably stop coming out to the ranch so often. He had no more excuses. But when Saturday rolled around again, he found himself saddling up the borrowed horse and riding out anyway. Emma was surprised to see him. "I thought you were done with the projects. I was thinking maybe I could help you bring in that vegetable garden," Russell said. "Looks like the squash is ready, and those tomatoes are going to rot on the vine if they are not picked soon." She laughed, a real laugh that lit up her whole face. "You are making up work now, maybe." He dismounted and tied his horse. "Or maybe I just wanted to see you." The words hung in the air between them, honest and raw. Emma's smile faded, replaced by something more serious. "Russell, I do not know if this is a good idea." "What is not a good idea? You coming out here every week. People are going to talk. Let them talk." "It is easy for you to say that. You are a man. If you ride away from Eldorado Canyon tomorrow, nobody is going to think twice about it. But I live here. This is my home. And if people think I am carrying on with the ranch hand, they will judge me for it." Russell stepped closer to her, close enough that he could see the flecks of gold in her green eyes. "Is that what we are doing, carrying on?" "I do not know what we are doing." Emma's voice was soft. "I only know that I look forward to Saturdays more than I should. That I think about you during the week when I should be thinking about work. That when you look at me, I feel something I have not felt in a very long time." "What do you feel?" Russell asked, even though he thought he knew, even though he hoped he knew. "Like maybe I am not alone anymore." She reached up and touched his face, her calloused fingers gentle against his weathered skin. "Like maybe there is still something good left in the world." He caught her hand and held it against his cheek. "Emma, I have been drifting for 10 years. Moving from place to place, never putting down roots, never letting myself care too much about anything or anyone. But then I met you, and for the first time I can remember, I want to stay somewhere. I want to have a reason to wake up in the morning beyond just survival. I want to matter to someone." "You matter to me," Emma whispered. "You already matter to me so much, and it scares me because I do not know if I can handle losing someone else." "You are not going to lose me." Russell pulled her closer, wrapping his arms around her, feeling her lean into him. "I am not going anywhere." They stood like that for a long time, holding each other in the afternoon sun, and Russell felt something settle inside him that he had not even known was restless. This was what he had been searching for all those years, he realized. Not fortune or adventure or glory. Just this, someone to hold, someone who saw him for exactly who he was and wanted him anyway. When Emma finally pulled back, her eyes were bright with unshed tears. "Stay for dinner, please, and then maybe we can talk about what happens next." "I would like that," Russell said. They picked vegetables from the garden together, working side by side in comfortable silence. Emma showed him which tomatoes were ripe, how to tell when the squash was ready, where the best beans were hiding under the leaves. It was peaceful work, grounding, and Russell found himself imagining doing this every week, every day, making a life here with this woman who had somehow become the center of his world. Inside, Emma cooked while Russell sat at the table and watched her. She moved around the small kitchen with efficient grace, chopping vegetables and stirring pots, humming one of those old folk songs under her breath. The late afternoon light came through the window and made everything golden, soft, and Russell thought he had never seen anything more beautiful. "I was not looking for this," Emma said suddenly, not turning from the stove. "After Thomas died, I thought I was done with men, done with relationships, done with all of it. I thought I would just work this ranch until I could not work anymore, and that would be enough." "Is it enough?" Russell asked quietly. "No." She turned to face him. "It is lonely. Every single day is lonely. I wake up alone and work alone and go to bed alone, and I tell myself it is fine, it is what I chose. But then you showed up, and I remembered what it feels like to have someone care whether I eat or sleep or if my fences are falling down. And I want that. I want you." Russell stood and crossed to her, taking the spoon from her hand and setting it aside. He cupped her face in his hands, looking into those green eyes that had seen so much hardship and had not broken. "I want you too," he said. "I want to wake up here and work beside you and go to bed with you and build something real. I do not have much to offer. No land, no money, just these hands and the will to work hard. But if you will have me, I will spend the rest of my life making sure you never feel lonely again." Emma's breath caught. "Are you asking me to marry you?" "I am." Russell smiled, feeling nervous for the first time since he was a boy. "I know it is fast. I know people will say we barely know each other. But I am 28 years old, and I have met enough people to know when something is real. This is real, Emma. What I feel for you is real." She was quiet for so long that he started to worry he had moved too fast, pushed too hard. But then she smiled, and it was like the sun coming out from behind clouds. "Yes, yes, yes, I will marry you." Emma laughed, the sound bright with joy. "You are right. It is fast and people will talk, and we do not know each other's favorite foods or what we look like first thing in the morning or 100 other little things. But I am 31 years old, and I spent 8 years married to a man who loved his dreams more than he loved me. I know what it feels like to be second place in someone's heart. And when you look at me, Russell Wade, I feel like I am the only thing in the world that matters to you. So yes, I will marry you." He kissed her then, gentle at first and then deeper, tasting the salt of happy tears on her lips. She wrapped her arms around his neck and kissed him back, and Russell felt like he was finally home after years of wandering. They were married 3 weeks later at the small church in Eldorado Canyon. The ceremony was simple, just a few people from town who had come to respect Emma and a couple of the hands from Silver Creek who Russell had worked with. Emma wore a dress she had borrowed from the minister's wife, pale blue cotton that brought out the color of her eyes. Russell wore his best shirt and trousers, his boots polished until they shone. There was no money for a fancy celebration, so afterward they went back to the ranch, which Russell now thought of as their ranch, and Emma made a special dinner with a cake she had traded eggs for at the bakery. They ate by candlelight, and Russell thought it was the finest meal he had ever had. That night, lying in bed with Emma curled against his side, Russell felt a contentment he had never known existed. "Are you happy?" he asked softly. "Yes." Emma tilted her head to look up at him. "Life was hard, Russell, so hard for so long. Every day was a struggle. Every night I fell into bed exhausted and wondering how I would face another day. But you made it soft. You made everything soft." He tightened his arms around her, understanding what she meant. Not that life would suddenly be easy, not that there would not still be hard work and struggles and obstacles to overcome. But that he made the burden lighter, made the hard parts bearable, gave her someone to lean on when she was tired. "We will build a good life here," Russell promised. "I do not know if we will ever be rich or famous or anything like that, but we will have each other and we will have this place, and that will be enough." "More than enough," Emma agreed. Russell quit his job at Silver Creek and started working the ranch full-time. With two of them sharing the load, things that had seemed impossible before became manageable. They repaired the rest of the fences, built a new chicken coop, cleared rocks from the pastures to make room for more cattle. Emma taught Russell how to tend the garden, and he taught her how to gentle horses so they could be sold for better prices. The work was hard, sometimes back-breaking, but Russell had never been happier. He woke up each morning with Emma beside him and went to bed each night the same way. They learned each other's rhythms and habits, learned how to work together without getting in each other's way. They learned how to fight when they disagreed about something and how to make up afterward. They learned what it meant to be partners in every sense of the word. That first winter was difficult. Money was tight, and there were days when they were not sure they would make it through to spring. But they cut back on everything except necessities, and they survived on beans and dried meat, and the vegetables Emma had preserved from the garden. On the coldest nights, they would huddle together under every blanket they owned and tell stories to pass the time. Russell told Emma about his childhood in Texas, the good memories he had of his father before the drinking got bad. Emma told Russell about her mother who had died when she was 16 and how much she still missed her. "You ever regret it?" Emma asked one night when the wind was howling outside and snow was piling up against the windows. "Marrying me, taking on this ranch and all its problems." Russell pulled her closer. "Not for a single second, do you?" "No." She kissed his shoulder. "Even on the hard days, I do not regret it. You are the best thing that ever happened to me, Russell Wade." Right back at you, Emma weighed. Spring came eventually, the way it always did, and with it new possibilities. One of the mares Russell had been working with gave birth to a beautiful colt with good lines, and they were able to sell it to a rancher passing through for enough money to buy more cattle. The garden flourished under Emma's care, producing more than they could eat themselves. She started selling produce in town, and word spread that Emma Wade's vegetables were the best in Eldorado Canyon. By their first anniversary, the ranch was starting to turn a small profit. It was not much, but it was progress, proof that hard work and determination could actually pay off. They celebrated by going to dinner at the hotel restaurant in town, a luxury they could not really afford but indulged in anyway. "To us," Russell said, raising his glass of beer. "To us," Emma echoed, clinking her glass against his, "and to many more years together." "Many more years," Russell agreed. He reached across the table and took her hand. "I love you, Emma. I know I do not say it enough, but I do. More than I ever thought I could love anyone. I love you too." Emma's eyes sparkled in the lamplight. "You changed my life, Russell. You gave me hope when I thought I was all out of it." They went home that night and made love slowly, tenderly, cherishing each other. Afterward, lying in the darkness, Russell thought about how much his life had changed in just 1 year. He had gone from a drifter with no purpose to a married man with a home and a future. All because he had been brave enough to offer help to a woman with a weathered face and a wagon full of supplies. The seasons rolled by, each one bringing its own challenges and rewards. They added more cattle to their herd, bought a few pigs and some goats. The ranch was still small compared to some of the big operations in the area, but it was theirs, built by their own hands and sweat. They made improvements gradually, fixing up the house room by room, replacing old equipment as they could afford it. In the spring of their second year together, Emma missed her monthly cycle. She did not say anything at first, afraid to hope, remembering all the times before when hope had turned to grief. But when 2 months passed and then 3, she finally told Russell. He was mending tack in the barn when she found him, her face serious but her eyes bright. "I need to tell you something," she said. Russell set down the leather strap he had been working on. "What is it?" "I am with child." Emma's voice shook slightly. "I am sure of it this time." 3 months along. For a moment Russell could not speak. Then he was on his feet, pulling her into his arms, holding her like she was made of glass. "Are you all right? Do you feel well? Should you be walking around? Should you sit down?" Emma laughed, the sound muffled against his chest. "I am fine. Women work through pregnancies all the time. I am not going to break." "I know, but you said before that you lost them, and I just want to make sure everything is all right." She pulled back to look at him, and he saw tears on her cheeks. "I am scared, Russell. I want this so much, but I am terrified that something will go wrong again." "Nothing is going to go wrong." Russell did not know if that was true, could not promise it, but he said it anyway, because it was what they both needed to hear. "We are going to be careful, and you are going to rest when you need to, and we are going to do everything possible to make sure this baby is healthy." "We are going to have a baby," Emma whispered, like she was testing the words, seeing if they felt real. "We are going to have a baby," Russell repeated, and then he was laughing and crying at the same time, overwhelmed with joy and fear and love so fierce it almost hurt. The pregnancy was not easy. Emma was sick for the first few months, could barely keep food down, and Russell worried constantly. He took over all the heavy work on the ranch, would not let her lift anything heavier than a basket of laundry. Emma protested at first, said she was not an invalid, but secretly she was grateful for his care. As her belly grew, Russell found himself talking to the baby, telling it about the ranch and the horses and how much they were looking forward to meeting it. Emma would laugh and call him silly, but he could see the happiness in her eyes. They argued about names. Emma wanted Sarah if it was a girl, after her mother. Russell wanted John if it was a boy, after his father before the drinking changed him. They finally agreed to wait until the baby was born to decide. The baby came on a cold November night, 6 weeks before they expected. Russell rode into town through darkness to fetch the midwife, pushing the horse faster than was safe, terrified that something would go wrong. The midwife, a capable woman named Mrs. Henderson who had delivered half the babies in Eldorado Canyon, was calm and efficient. "First babies take their time," she told Russell when they arrived back at the ranch. "Go boil some water and gather clean towels and try not to get in the way." The labor lasted through the night and into the next day. Russell paced and prayed and felt utterly useless. He could hear Emma crying out in pain, and it took everything he had not to burst into the bedroom. But Mrs. Henderson had been firm. Fathers had no place in the birthing room. Finally, as the sun was setting on the second day, he heard a thin wail. His heart stopped, and then Mrs. Henderson was opening the door, smiling. "You have a son," she said. "A small son since he came early, but he has good strong lungs and all his fingers and toes. Your wife is tired but doing well." Russell pushed past her into the bedroom. Emma was propped up against pillows, her hair soaked with sweat, her face pale with exhaustion. But she was smiling, and in her arms was a tiny bundle wrapped in a clean blanket. "Come meet your son," Emma said softly. Russell approached slowly, almost afraid. He had never held a baby before, was not sure he would know how. But when Emma transferred the warm weight into his arms, something fundamental shifted inside him. He looked down at the tiny face, the closed eyes, the impossibly small fingers curled into fists, and felt love so overwhelming it brought him to his knees beside the bed. "He is perfect," Russell managed to say around the lump in his throat. "He looks like you," Emma said. "Same nose, same chin." "Poor kid," Russell laughed, but his eyes were wet. "What should we name him?" Emma reached out and touched the baby's cheek. "I was thinking maybe John Russell, after both his father and grandfather." "John Russell Wade." Russell tested the name. "I like it." "Johnny for short," Emma said, and then her eyes closed, exhaustion finally overtaking her. Mrs. Henderson shooed Russell out of the room so Emma could rest, but he came back an hour later and sat beside the bed, watching his wife and son sleep. He had thought he understood what it meant to have a family, but this was different. This was responsibility and terror and joy all mixed together until he could not tell where one feeling ended and another began. Little Johnny was a fussy baby at first, crying often and sleeping in short bursts that left both Russell and Emma exhausted. Emma nursed him, and Russell walked the floor with him when he would not settle, singing old songs he half remembered from his own childhood. It was the hardest thing Russell had ever done, harder than breaking wild horses or working cattle in a blizzard, but it was also the most rewarding. As winter gave way to spring, Johnny grew stronger and began to thrive. He was a serious baby, watching everything with wide eyes that were starting to turn the same green as his mother's. Russell found himself doing things he never thought he would do, like having conversations with an infant or making silly faces just to see him smile. The ranch suffered a bit that first year with Johnny. There was less time for work, less energy to put into improvements. But they managed, and slowly they found a new rhythm that incorporated the baby into their daily routines. Emma would bring Johnny out in a basket while she worked in the garden, and Russell would check on him between chores. "You ever miss it?" Emma asked one evening while they sat on the porch watching the sun set. Johnny was asleep in her arms, finally worn out after a fussy afternoon. "The freedom you had before, being able to just pick up and go wherever you wanted," Russell thought about that. Sometimes I remember what it felt like to have no responsibilities, to answer to no one but myself. But I would not go back to that life for anything. This is what I wanted, even when I did not know I wanted it. A home, a family, a reason to wake up in the morning beyond just surviving. I am glad you stopped to help me that day, Emma said softly. I am glad you kept coming back even when you did not have to. Me too. Russell put his arm around her shoulders, careful not to disturb the sleeping baby. Best decision I ever made. The years rolled on, bringing changes and challenges and countless small moments of happiness. Johnny grew into a sturdy toddler who followed Russell around the ranch, trying to help with chores in the way that small children do, making more work than they save but filling every day with wonder. Emma taught him his letters and numbers, read to him from her small collection of books, sang him the same songs her mother had sung to her. When Johnny was 3, Emma became pregnant again. This time the pregnancy was easier, her body knowing what to do. She gave birth to a daughter in the heat of summer, a tiny thing with dark hair and her father's serious eyes. They named her Grace, and Russell thought he had never seen anything more beautiful than his wife holding their daughter while their son climbed onto the bed to meet his baby sister. The ranch prospered slowly but steadily. They added more land when a neighboring homesteader gave up and sold out cheap. They built a larger barn and a proper chicken coop and fenced in more pasture for the growing cattle herd. It was never easy, but it was theirs, built by their own hands, and that made all the difference. On their 10th anniversary, Russell surprised Emma by taking her into town and buying her a proper ring, a simple gold band with a small diamond. She cried when he slipped it on her finger, replacing the plain brass ring they had used at their wedding because it was all they could afford. "You did not have to do this," Emma said, turning her hand to watch the diamond catch the light. "I wanted to." Russell kissed her. "I wanted you to have something beautiful, something that shows the world how much you mean to me." That night, with the children asleep in the next room, they lay in bed and talked about everything they had built together. The ranch that had gone from barely surviving to genuinely thriving. The children who were healthy and happy. The life they had carved out of rock and dust and sheer determination. "You remember what I said to you on our wedding night?" Emma asked, tracing patterns on Russell's chest. "You said life was hard, but I made it soft." "It is still true." Emma propped herself up on one elbow to look at him. "Every single day, even the hard ones, you make everything softer. You make the world gentler. You are the best man I have ever known," Russell weighed. "I am just a man," Russell said, embarrassed. "Nothing special. You are special to me." Emma kissed him. "You are everything to me." They made love slowly, tenderly, with the ease of long familiarity, but also with passion that had not dimmed over the years. Afterward, Russell held his wife and thought about the journey that had brought him here. All the years of drifting, of not belonging anywhere, of searching for something he could not name. And then that day in Eldorado Canyon when he had seen a weathered woman loading supplies and made the choice to help her. "I love you," Russell said into the darkness. "I love you too," Emma replied, already half asleep. The years continued to pass. Johnny grew into a capable boy who could ride and rope and was already talking about running the ranch himself one day. Grace was quieter, more thoughtful, but she had a gift with animals that reminded Russell of himself. They added a third child, another son they named Thomas after Emma's first husband, and Russell was touched that she wanted to honor that memory even though it was complicated. The ranch continued to grow and prosper. They were never rich, but they were comfortable, and that was more than enough. They hired help when they could afford it, gave jobs to drifters who needed them, because Russell remembered what it was like to need a chance. Emma sold vegetables and preserves in town. and people came from miles around for her strawberry jam. On their 20th anniversary, Russell and Emma sat on the porch as they often did in the evenings, watching their children play in the yard. Johnny was 15 now, already taller than his father. Grace was 12, helping her younger brother catch fireflies in a jar. The sun was setting in spectacular colors, painting the sky in shades of orange and red and purple. 20 years, Emma said, shaking her head. Where did the time go? Do not know, Russell admitted. Seems like just yesterday you were loading that wagon in town and I was working up the courage to offer help. I almost said no, Emma laughed. I was so used to doing everything myself, so suspicious of anyone who offered kindness. I thought you must want something. I did want something. Russell took her hand. I wanted exactly this. I just did not know it yet. Emma leaned against his shoulder. My face is more weathered now than it was then. More lines, more gray hair. Sometimes I look in the mirror and wonder what you see when you look at me. I see the most beautiful woman I have ever known, Russell said honestly. I see the mother of my children, the partner who built this life with me. I see the only person I have ever loved with my whole heart. The lines and the gray hair are just proof of all the years we have had together, and I treasure every one of them. Life was hard, Emma said softly, repeating words she had said before. So hard for so long. But you made it soft, Russell. You made everything soft. We made it soft, Russell corrected gently. We did it together. They sat in comfortable silence, watching as dusk turned to dark and stars began to appear. Johnny called the younger children inside, and Grace complained that she was not done catching fireflies yet, and Thomas wanted one more story before bed. Normal family sounds, the kind Russell had dreamed about during all those lonely years of drifting. As they grew older, Russell and Emma settled into a comfortable rhythm. The hard physical work of the ranch was gradually taken over by Johnny, who had indeed grown into a capable rancher, and eventually by Grace and Thomas as well. Russell still worked every day, but he let his children do more and more, knowing that someday the ranch would be theirs. Emma's garden became legendary in the area, and people would travel from neighboring towns to buy her plants and seeds. She taught Grace everything she knew, passing down knowledge the way her own mother had passed it to her. In the evenings, Russell would often find them in the garden together, 3 generations of knowledge being shared. When Russell turned 55, his back started giving him trouble from all those years of hard work. Emma would rub liniment into it while he groaned and complained, and she would laugh and tell him he was getting old. We both are, she would add, and he would pull her down for a kiss because she was still the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. Johnny married a girl from town, a kind young woman named Catherine who fit seamlessly into the family. They had their first child a year later, a daughter they named Emma after her grandmother. Russell cried the first time he held his granddaughter, overwhelmed with the knowledge that the family he and Emma had started was continuing, growing, spreading out into the future. Grace surprised everyone by falling in love with a cowboy who passed through looking for work. Russell saw something of his younger self in the young man, saw the same restlessness and searching. But he also saw the way the cowboy looked at Grace, like she was the answer to every question he had ever asked, and he gave them his blessing. They married and settled on a piece of land a few miles away, close enough to visit but far enough to build their own life. Thomas, the youngest, seemed content to stay on the ranch and work with his brother. He was steady and reliable, not flashy or ambitious, but good all the way through. Russell was proud of all his children, but there was something special about Thomas, who had inherited Emma's quiet strength. As Russell approached his 60th birthday, he found himself reflecting more and more on the life he had lived. He thought about that young man who had ridden into Eldorado Canyon with nothing but a horse and a gun, searching for something he could not name. He thought about the choice he had made to help a weathered woman with her wagon, and how that one small act of kindness had changed everything. "Do you have any regrets?" Emma asked him one night. They were lying in bed, her head on his shoulder, his arm around her. This was still his favorite time of day, these quiet moments when it was just the two of them. About what? About anything. Your life, the choices you made. Russell thought about that. "I regret the years I wasted before I met you. All that time drifting around, not putting down roots, not letting myself care about anything. But I suppose I had to go through all that to become the man who was ready for you. What about the hard times? Do you regret those?" No. Russell was surprised to realize it was true. The hard times made the good times better. They taught us what we were capable of, and we went through them together, which made all the difference. Emma kissed his shoulder. "I am glad I said yes when you asked me to marry you. Best decision I ever made." "Second best," Russell corrected. "The best decision was not turning me away that first day when I offered to help." "You are right." Emma laughed softly. "That was the best decision." They fell asleep like that, wrapped around each other the way they had been for more than 30 years. Russell woke once in the night and listened to Emma breathing beside him, steady and peaceful, and felt grateful beyond words for this life they had built. The years rolled on, gentle now, full of grandchildren and family dinners and the satisfaction of seeing the ranch thrive under Johnny's management. Russell could not do as much physical work as he once had, but he was still useful, still had knowledge to share and skills to teach. He worked with the young horses and helped Johnny make decisions about the herd and fixed small things around the ranch that needed fixing. Emma's hair was completely silver now, her face deeply lined, her hands gnarled with arthritis. But to Russell she was just as beautiful as the day he met her, maybe more so because now he knew every line and scar, knew the story behind each mark time had left on her. On their 40th anniversary, their children threw them a party. It seemed like half the town showed up, filling the ranch yard with people and noise and laughter. There was food and music, and Russell danced with Emma the way they had at their wedding, slower now but no less meaningful. As the party wound down and the guests began to leave, Russell pulled Emma aside. They walked out to the fence line they had built together all those years ago, looking out over land they knew every inch of. 40 years, Emma said. "I can hardly believe it." "Best 40 years of my life," Russell said. "Mine too." Emma leaned against him and he put his arm around her shoulders. "Do you think we did all right? Made the right choices, raised good children, built something worth having? I think we did better than all right." Russell looked around at the ranch, at the solid buildings and healthy cattle and well-tended land. But more than that, he thought about the family they had created, the love that filled this place. "I think we did something remarkable. We took nothing and made something. We took hard lives and made them soft." "You made my life soft," Emma corrected gently. "No, we did it together. Always together." They stood there as the sun set, painting the sky in beautiful colors, and Russell felt a contentment so deep it was almost like peace. He had spent the first 28 years of his life searching for something, and then he had spent the next 40 years living it. He had found his purpose in this weathered woman and the life they built together. As they grew older still, Russell and Emma settled into the role of beloved grandparents and eventually great-grandparents. The ranch was firmly in Johnny's hands now, thriving under his management. Russell and Emma spent their days in gentle pursuits, tending the flower garden Emma had always wanted but never had time for, sitting on the porch and watching the world go by, telling stories to grandchildren and great-grandchildren who gathered at their feet. Russell's hair was white now, his face as weathered as Emma's had been when he first met her. His hands were twisted with arthritis, and he moved slowly, carefully. But he could still fix a broken chair or mend a torn shirt, and he took satisfaction in being useful even in small ways. Emma moved even more slowly, her joints stiff and painful on cold mornings. But she still tended her garden, still made her famous strawberry jam, still sang the old songs while she worked. Russell would sit and watch her, marveling that this woman had chosen him, had built a life with him, had loved him through all these years. On a warm spring evening when Russell was 71 and Emma was 74, they sat on the porch as they had thousands of times before. The yard was full of family, multiple generations playing and talking and living the life that Russell and Emma had started. "I have been thinking," Emma said slowly. "About what?" "About that day you first helped me with the wagon. About how close I came to saying no, to not letting you into my life. About how different everything would have been if I had made that choice." Russell took her hand, feeling the knobby knuckles and rough skin, the hand that had worked beside his for more than 4 decades. "But you did not say no. You said yes, and we built this life together." "I just want you to know," Emma said, turning to look at him with eyes that were still bright despite her aged face, "that every single day since then has been a gift. Even the hard days, even the times when we struggled, all of it was worth it because I got to spend it with you." "Emma." Russell's voice was rough with emotion. "Let me finish." She squeezed his hand. "You saved me, Russell, not just from the hard work or the loneliness, but from giving up. I was drowning when you met me, going through the motions of living but not really alive anymore. And then you showed up and reminded me that there were still good things in the world, that there were still reasons to hope. You made my hard life soft, and I will love you forever for that." Russell could not speak around the lump in his throat, so he just pulled her close and held her, feeling her heart beat against his chest. "I love you," he finally managed to say, "more than I can ever put into words." They sat like that as the sun set and the stars came out, surrounded by the family they had created and the life they had built. Russell thought about the journey that had brought him here, from that lonely drifter to this contented old man with everything that mattered. That night, lying in bed, Emma curled against his side as she had for more than 40 years, Russell felt a deep sense of peace. He had lived a good life, had loved and been loved, had built something that would last beyond him. He had taken one chance on a weathered woman loading a wagon, and that choice had given him everything. "Life was hard, but you made it soft," Emma murmured sleepily, repeating the words that had become their truth. "We made it soft together," Russell replied, holding her close. "Always together." The years continued, gentler now as they aged. There were health scares and recoveries, days when joints ached and memories grew fuzzy. But through it all, Russell and Emma had each other, their love deepened and strengthened by all the years and experiences they had shared. When Russell was 75, he had a heart spell that scared everyone. The doctor came out from town and prescribed rest and taking things easy. Russell grumbled about it, but Emma was firm. "You are not leaving me yet," she said, her voice brooking no argument. "We still have years left together." And they did. Russell recovered and learned to pace himself better, learned to let others do the heavy work while he focused on smaller tasks. Emma's arthritis grew worse, making it hard for her to do the delicate work in the garden she loved. But Grace and the granddaughters took over, always making sure Emma felt included and valued. They celebrated their 50th anniversary surrounded by what seemed like half the county. 5 decades of marriage, of partnership, of love that had weathered every storm. Someone asked Russell the secret to a long and happy marriage, and he thought about it carefully before answering. "The secret is finding the right person," he said finally. "Someone who makes you want to be better. Someone who will work beside you through the hard times. Someone who makes every day worth living. And then, once you find that person, you do not take them for granted. You show up every day and do the work of loving them, even when it is not easy." He looked at Emma as he said it, and she smiled at him, that same small smile he had fallen in love with all those years ago. "Also," Russell added, "it helps if you think your wife is the most beautiful woman in the world, even when she has got wrinkles and gray hair and her hands are too stiff to work like they used to." "I do have wrinkles," Emma agreed, laughing. "And you are still the most beautiful woman I have ever seen," Russell said, completely serious. As they moved into their 80s, life slowed even further. There were days when they did not leave the house, content to sit together and watch the world through the window. Emma would read aloud from the newspapers Johnny brought from town, and Russell would tell stories about the old days, back when the ranch was just starting and everything was a struggle. The great-grandchildren loved these stories, loved hearing about how their great-grandparents had built the ranch from nothing, about the hard winters and the dry summers, and the times when they were not sure they would make it. But they always made it, Russell would say, because they had each other. One quiet evening when Russell was 83 and Emma was 86, they sat together on the porch watching the sunset. It had become their ritual, this evening time together, a chance to reflect on the day and enjoy each other's company. "You remember everything?" Emma asked suddenly. "Everything. All of our years together. Every moment, every conversation, every sunrise we have watched together." Russell thought about that. "I remember the important things. The day we met, the day we married, the births of our children. I remember the first time you said you loved me and the last time, which was this morning. I remember 40, 50, 60 years of waking up beside you and thinking I was the luckiest man alive. What if I forget?" Emma's voice was small, vulnerable. "What if my mind goes the way old Mrs. Patterson's did and I do not remember who you are? Then I will remember for both of us." Russell took her hand. "I will tell you our story every day if I have to. I will remind you that you are Emma Wade, that you are my wife, that we built a life and a family together. And even if you do not remember the details, you will remember that you are loved." Tears ran down Emma's weathered cheeks. "How did I get so lucky?" "I am the lucky one," Russell said. "I was drifting through life with no purpose, no home, no reason to keep going beyond simple survival. And then I saw you loading that wagon and something told me to help. That one choice gave me everything. You gave me everything." They sat in silence as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in brilliant colors one more time. The ranch spread out before them, solid and enduring, a testament to everything they had built together. They could hear the sounds of family inside the house, multiple generations living and laughing and carrying on the legacy Russell and Emma had started. As the years passed and they grew even older, their children and grandchildren made sure they were never alone, never left to struggle with the simple tasks of daily living that had become difficult. Johnny and Catherine moved into the house to care for them, and Grace visited almost every day. The great-grandchildren would climb onto Russell's lap carefully, mindful of his fragile bones, and beg for stories. Emma's memory did start to fade in her late 80s, but Russell kept his promise. Every day he would tell her their story, reminding her of how they met and fell in love and built a life together. Some days she remembered, and some days she did not, but she always smiled when he talked about their life. "Life was hard, but you made it soft," she would say sometimes. "The the phrase ingrained so deeply that even fading memory could not erase it. "We made it soft together," Russell would reply, the call and response of their love story. On a warm summer evening, when Emma was 90 years old, she passed away peacefully in her sleep with Russell holding her hand. She had been declining for weeks, her body simply worn out from 9 decades of life, but she had held on with the same stubborn determination she had shown all her life. At the end, she opened her eyes one last time and looked at Russell. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything. For seeing me when I felt invisible, for making me believe in good things again, for loving me." "Thank you for letting me love you," Russell replied, tears running down his weathered face. "Thank you for giving me a home and a family and a reason to live. Thank you for every single day we had together." Emma smiled, that small, gentle smile he had fallen in love with 62 years ago. And then she closed her eyes and was gone. Russell grieved deeply for the loss of his wife, the partner who had been by his side for more than 6 decades. But he did not regret a single moment they had shared, not even the pain of losing her, because she had given him a life worth living. She had taken a drifting cowboy with nothing to offer but willing hands and a good heart, and had shown him what it meant to belong somewhere, to matter to someone, to love and be loved in return. He lived for 2 more years after Emma's death, surrounded by the family they had created together. He told their story to anyone who would listen, making sure the grandchildren and great-grandchildren understood what their grandmother had meant to him, what they had built together from nothing but determination and love. On his last day, Russell sat on the porch and looked out over the ranch. Everything was green and thriving, the cattle fat and healthy, the buildings solid and well-maintained. He could hear children playing in the yard, could smell dinner cooking inside the house, could feel the warmth of the afternoon sun on his weathered face. He closed his eyes and thought about Emma, about that first day when he had crossed a dusty street to help a tired woman with her wagon. He thought about all the choices that had led him to that moment, all the years of drifting that had finally brought him to the one place he was meant to be. He thought about their life together, the hard times and the good times and all the ordinary moments in between that had made up a marriage. "Life was hard," Russell murmured to himself, "but we made it soft." That evening, with the sunset painting the sky in brilliant colors, and his family surrounding him with love, Russell Wade passed away peacefully. He was 85 years old, and he died knowing that he had lived a good life, had loved well and been loved in return, had built something that would last long after he was gone. At his funeral, the little church in Eldorado Canyon was packed with people whose lives Russell and Emma had touched over the years. There were the children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, of course, but also people from town who remembered Emma's kindness and Russell's quiet generosity. There were ranch hands who had worked for them over the years, neighbors who had been helped during hard times, people whose lives had been made a little bit easier because Russell and Emma had been in the world. Johnny spoke about his father, about the lessons Russell had taught him through example rather than words, about showing up every day and doing the work that needed doing, about treating people with respect and kindness, about the importance of family and home and building something that would last. Grace spoke about how her parents had loved each other, how even in their oldest years they had still held hands and looked at each other like they were young and in love. She spoke about the legacy they had left, not just in the ranch and the family, but in the way they had lived their lives with integrity and purpose. Thomas simply said that his father had been the best man he had ever known, and his mother had been the best woman, and together they had shown all of them what it meant to build a life worth living. They buried Russell next to Emma in the small cemetery on the hill overlooking the ranch. The headstone was simple, just their names and dates and the inscription that Johnny had chosen. Together, they made the hard life soft. The ranch continued to thrive under Johnny's management, and eventually under his children's management after him. The house remained in the family, generation after generation, each one adding their own touch, but always maintaining the core of what Russell and Emma had built. The story of how they met and fell in love became family legend, told and retold to each new generation as an example of what was possible when two people chose to build a life together. Years turned into decades, and the world changed in ways Russell and Emma could never have imagined. But the ranch remained, solid and enduring, a testament to what one cowboy and one weathered woman had created from nothing but hard work and determination, and love that lasted a lifetime. The fence line Russell had first repaired when he met Emma had been rebuilt many times over the years, but a section of the original posts remained, preserved by the family as a reminder of where it all started. Couples who married into the family were taken to see it, were told the story of how Russell had offered to help a struggling widow, and how that one act of kindness had changed both their lives. "Life was hard, but you made it soft," Emma had said to Russell on their wedding night, and that phrase became the family motto, a reminder that love could transform struggle into something bearable, that partnership could make impossible tasks achievable, that choosing to see and help another person could lead to everything worth having. The legacy of Russell and Emma Wade was not measured in acres or cattle or money, though the ranch prospered and the family grew wealthy over the generations. Their real legacy was in the example they set of what a life well lived looked like. They showed their children and grandchildren, and all who came after that true success was not about accumulation or achievement, but about connection and commitment, and choosing every day to show up for the people you loved. They proved that it was never too late to start over, never too late to take a chance on love, never too late to build something meaningful. Russell had been 28 and drifting when he met Emma, convinced he would never have a home or family. Emma had been 31 and alone, worn down by hardship and loss, certain her best days were behind her. But they had found each other, and together they had built a life that lasted more than 6 decades and left ripples that would extend far into the future. On quiet evenings when the ranch was peaceful and the work was done, members of the family would sometimes sit on the old porch where Russell and Emma had spent so many evenings together. They would watch the sunset paint the sky in brilliant colors and think about the two people who had started it all, who had taken hard lives and made them soft through the simple act of loving each other well. And sometimes, if they listened carefully, they could almost hear the echo of old voices, Russell telling Emma their story one more time, Emma laughing and saying she remembered, both of them content in the life they had built together from nothing but hope and determination, and a chance meeting on a dusty street in Eldorado Canyon all those years ago. The story of the cowboy who chose the bride with the weathered face became more than just family history. It became a reminder that true beauty was not about smooth skin or perfect features, but about strength and resilience, and the capacity to love despite hardship. It became a testament to the power of seeing another person, really seeing them, and choosing to help without expecting anything in return. It became proof that the most important choices we make are often the small ones, the everyday decisions to be kind or generous or brave. Russell had been a drifter with no prospects when he crossed that street to help Emma with her wagon. He could have ridden past, could have minded his own business, could have stayed closed off and protected as he had been for years. But something made him take that chance, made him offer help to a stranger, and that one choice gave him everything. Emma had been alone and struggling, worn down by years of hardship, suspicious of kindness, because she had learned that most people wanted something in return. She could have refused Russell's help, could have protected herself by staying isolated, could have convinced herself she was better off alone. But she said yes, first to the help and then to the possibility of more, and that openness gave her everything. Together, they proved that it was possible to start with nothing and build something extraordinary. They proved that love did not require perfect circumstances or perfect people, just two individuals willing to show up for each other day after day, year after year, through hardship and joy and all the ordinary moments in between. They proved that choosing each other every single day, even when it was hard, especially when it was hard, was the foundation of a life worth living. Their story ended as all stories must, with death and grief, and the inevitable passage of time. But it also continued, living on in the children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren they left behind, in the ranch that still stood solid and thriving, in the example they set of what it meant to build a life of purpose and meaning. They had been ordinary people who did extraordinary things simply by loving each other well, and that was a legacy that would never fade. The weathered face that Russell had chosen, the face that showed every hardship Emma had endured, became the face he treasured above all others. The lines and scars and marks of time were not flaws to be hidden but evidence of a life fully lived, battles fought and survived, strength that went bone deep. He had looked at her and seen not just who she was but who they could be together, and that vision had sustained them through more than 6 decades of partnership. Emma had looked at this drifting cowboy and seen not just a man willing to help with her wagon, but someone who could help carry the burden of her life. She had seen kindness in his eyes and strength in his hands, and a loneliness that matched her own. She had taken a chance on him, had let him into her life and her heart, and he had spent the rest of his days proving that her trust was not misplaced. They had made a hard life soft, not by avoiding difficulties or pretending struggles did not exist, but by facing everything together. They had shouldered burdens as a team, celebrated victories together, found joy in small moments and comfort in each other's presence. They had built not just a ranch but a refuge, not just a house but a home, not just a family but a legacy of love that would endure long after they were gone. And in the end, that was the greatest gift they gave to all who came after. The knowledge that love was not just possible but transformative, that choosing each other every day could make the hardest life soft, that two people working together could build something that would last forever. The cowboy and the bride with the weathered face had found each other on a dusty street in Nevada in 1883, and together they had created something beautiful that time itself could not erase.